Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I am Naren Arulrajah, the founder of the Vet Business Podcast and one of your co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a range of topics from practice management, marketing, finance, leadership, HR, law, and more. Whether you are a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, or a manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities of this unique field. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, YouTube Music, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Today, I have an exciting guest to talk about a very important topic, disciplined entrepreneurship. And the guest is Dr. Christie Cornelius. She's a veterinarian and she's the founder of VetSpark and a business consultant. Dr. Cornelius, welcome to the show. Let's jump into the topic of disciplined entrepreneurship. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Tell us your story.
Oh, thank you, Naren. And I'm so happy to be here. So gracious. Thank you. My name is Christie Cornelius. I am an entrepreneur, business owner, and a business consultant in the veterinary industry. I graduated from Texas A&M University in 2004 with my DVM. I went into general practice and emergency practice for a while in Houston. And then in 2012, started my first company, which was a pet hospice and home euthanasia and pet aquamation company that I ended up selling to Blue Pearl in 2021. I also started a nonprofit 501c called the Fair Winds Fund to help the community afford some of the services that we provided. In addition, during that time period, I also co-founded a software company called Beloved Pet Software with Dr. Deborah Rotman. It is a software that helps to put electronic tracking to inventory and pet cremation. And so it helps the independent pet crematories to thrive and compete with others. After being purchased by Blue Pearl, I ended up leaving my medical director role about a year later to pursue my MBA at Rice University. I joined their executive program in 2022. The executive program is for those individuals that have been in the workforce for 15 to 20 years. They have become good managers, but they want to up their leadership level, and they want to be able to function in the executive suite level. And so that's what that program is designed for. And so I started that in 2022. In the meantime, also restarted my pet hospice service called Fair Winds on Galveston Island. And then eventually started doing some consulting under VetSpark.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate you and I appreciate having you. Let's jump into today's conversation. It's disciplined entrepreneurship. So what is disciplined entrepreneurship?
So disciplined entrepreneurship, I think if we look in the context of, first we figure out there are two main ways to be an entrepreneur. One is if you're in a small to medium enterprise and you're working in a job for cash flow. And then the other segment we're looking at is more an IDE, what's called innovation-driven, which is more your team-based, your desire or your goals are to become more regional or global in nature. It's kind of the going big or going home concept. And so when looking at that, innovation equals invention plus commercialization. So there's some talent and some skills involved in those. And those aren't things that are necessarily best done by just one single person. And so it's about developing the team as much as it is developing an idea. And so when we look at, there's 6 themes to disciplined entrepreneurship. And those 6 themes include: who is your customer? What can you do for your customer? How does your customer acquire your product? How do you make money off of your product? How do you design and build your product? And how do you scale your business? And so some of the things that you do in a discipline program, and here's a concept, is there a way for us to actually teach entrepreneurship? And the program that I was in definitely was structured that entrepreneurship can be taught. It's not necessarily a nature thing, but it's also a nurture thing. And so we want to be smart about our market segmentation, for example. We're selecting what's called a beachhead market. We are building an end user profile. We're calculating the total addressable market size for our beachhead market. We're doing persona profiles, and we're identifying our next customers. We want to be able to quantify our value proposition, defining our core, and charting our competitive position too as well. And so really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of it's different from the concept of build it and they will come. It's really a more thoughtful, innovative process to really understand what your market is like, to understand what market research is, what your clients need and want from you, and what they're going to pay you for. And so really you're testing all of your key assumptions. It's really a hypothesis that you're trying to test as you kind of move along in your design, and being able to define your minimal viable product, and you're starting out small and you're making small innovations, and you're very direct and impactful in how you really kind of pace yourself. And you're asking a lot of questions and doing interviews and things like that. So it really takes a lot of deep research. It takes somebody that is interested in finding those things out. I think, we all hear entrepreneurs have, about a 10% chance of, being successful. Well, if you actually take some of the steps in this discipline entrepreneurship program, then, the chances of those successful businesses surviving long-term definitely goes up.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to throw a curveball here. I hope you don't mind it.
Sure.
If I'm a vet practice owner listening to this, I'm like, I run a veterinary practice. I'm in a small town or a medium-sized city or a big city. How does it apply to me? I understand you have an executive MBA program, and I understand you have the best, education when it comes to, building big companies and, successful companies, perhaps, and Airbnb or something, right? That's where you hear about entrepreneurs. Like, how do I apply it to my local tiny vet practice?
So, business owners and entrepreneurs in those positions, it's becoming more and more difficult to maintain your competitiveness. And it's an idea of really focusing in on what your community needs, what your clients need from you, paying attention to your clients, and really getting what your competitive edge is just out of your just local little segment. And so, with the idea of that, I understand that veterinarians, and being a veterinarian and an owner at the same time, we don't have a lot of extra time to do those things. So What I ask really in those situations is just increase your awareness of it. And you can always, hire a consultant to help you, or find your own resources if you want to really kind of dig in on that. But really just be aware of what it is, and really what, going through those processes, what they do to help increase your, revenue streams, your profit margins, your the number of people that are returning to your practice. And so if you just have a general understanding in that situation, I think that's the most important. And just depending on what your satisfaction is with what you're doing and what your goals are for the future will dictate or determine how deep you want to dive into things like this.
Perfect. So you talked about 6 pillars, right? Let's take the first one. What is the first one again?
So you really want to know who your customer really is.
Okay, so let's take that. Do you really want to know who your customer really is? What you're saying is you want to understand what they really want and try to zoom in on giving them what they really want, right? Like, for example, if you are in an environment where everybody works at an office, right? most people. And, then of course, maybe opening late hours might be a good thing. Maybe that will be convenient for them, right? Opening on a weekend. Is that what you mean? I'm trying to kind of figure out, how do I apply it listening to this podcast? I want our listeners to get some value from today. So how do I apply what you're just teaching me to my practice?
Yeah, it's a process of you can set up surveys to your clients. You can set up focus groups, interviews. Or someone in management at your practice, someone that can just get that information that you need from your clients, to keep them engaged and satisfied in your services.
So you're saying lean in, really try to understand. So what you're saying is, don't do 100 things. Do the 2 or 3 things that perhaps nobody else is doing among your competition, but what customers really want. If it is late hours, for example, maybe give that to them, right? Or if it is, they hate the fact that, a lot of the offices around you are not, clean and, not well kept and, whatever. And then you have an amazing office. Things like that. Or maybe, it's easier to get to. So maybe make sure you are in a location that's really easy to get to. Is that what you're trying to? Okay.
Yeah, really taking a deep dive of what's important to them. And you're right, it's 2 or 3 things. It's not everything.
It's not like 100 things, just 2 or 3 key things that really differentiates you. Yep. Got it. Let's get to the second point. What's the second part of discipline entrepreneurship?
It's about what you can actually do for your customers. So what value are you bringing your customers? And so these are things like, I go the extra mile here because, this is the value that I'm bringing to my client. It's different from the value in terms of the price that you charge. It's what are you doing to justify what you are charging your client for what you're doing. And so it's really being able to quantify your value proposition. It's understanding what you're doing for what you're charging and why you're charging what you're charging.
So the first one is, what do your customers want? And the second one, again, is what are you doing for your customers, right?
Correct. Yes.
And I guess what's the secret sauce here? What is the difference between somebody who's successful and not? What are they doing with regards to, what they're offering their customers that makes them successful? Is it that they only do the few things versus a lot of things? In other words, I think you threw the idea of minimum viable product, like the core things that are so critical, like, okay, check, do it really well, versus do lots of other things that nobody cares about.
Yeah, exactly. It's asking your clients, and then it's also asking for their feedback, and it's actually taking action on the feedback.
Okay. So if your clients say that, I don't really care for the coffee, I don't really care that you have the best lobby that you spend $300,000 or you're going to spend $300,000 on, don't do that. Instead, just do the things they want, right? Exactly. They care about, they appreciate. For example, if clients, don't want to wait 2 hours, let's say you run a, 24-hour or emergency clinic, then maybe let them text you and, you text them back when they can come in. So they don't have to wait 2 hours to get in, like zoning in on like, what is it that they really want?
Right. Finding your customers' pain points. Exactly. Pain points. Okay. And figuring out solutions to those.
Okay. And just zooming in on that and really doing that, like solving those problems. Okay. Got it. What's the third one?
Third one is, how does your customer acquire your product?
Okay. Is that what you call marketing?
That's part of it. It's really determining your what's called a customer decision-making unit. Although, the puppy has, technically, there's, 1 or 2 parents involved, and then you have the child, right? Yeah. And so who is making the decisions of that combination? And so you've got to focus your marketing both on, the primary person who's actually paying for the service, but also direct your marketing towards, maybe someone that would influence a decision like a child or someone similar to that.
Got it. So you're saying the buyer's journey, in this case, the pet owners, or the pet parents, or whoever the decision makers are, how do they go about choosing someone like you, right?
Exactly.
And then once you understand that, then optimizing for that. For example, if a lot of people in your neighborhood start their research on Google, what are you doing with Google? Are you running ads? Are you, doing SEO? Are you showing up near the top? what are those keywords they're typing in, right? And then what else are they looking at? Are they reading my reviews? Do I have enough reviews? What are my plans to get more reviews? Do they like the fact that practice treats pets just like mine, meaning the same breed, etc. So am I using those kind of pictures in my social media? So like, for example, we have a Sheltie. So if I see a lot of Shelties you take care of, even like one Sheltie, that's kind of like, oh yeah, my Sheltie is going to be in good hands just because the other Sheltie is in good hands. So you're saying understand the journey, whatever that is, and then maximize your marketing or adjust your marketing so that it really grabs them, as opposed to this and doing that and like trying this. So like in other words, instead of just throwing darts.
What you think is going to work, right? You don't want to be doing that. And you also want to pay close attention to what your competition is doing.
Interesting. Okay. Why do you say that? Why is it important to, like, the reason I'm asking is there could be a huge, chain, right? With 100 locations, and they might play a totally different game because, there you might not know your vet. But in your case, maybe the attraction is you, and I get Jenny, the Dr. Jenny, to take care of my pet, and she's family. So that's what people come to you for, right? So I do marketing. So that's what I'm kind of asking you that question. So I'm not saying don't be aware of competition, but doesn't mean we have to do what they do, because they are different from you. Like their game is different from your game.
You want to see if you can figure out what the competition is doing correctly.
Right. Meaning like, because if you are Ritz-Carlton and they are perhaps, Best Western, you don't want to do things the way they do it. Right. In other words, you have to do things that's right for you.
Yes, exactly. What works.
Makes sense. Yeah. What's the fourth one?
Fourth one is, how do you make money off of your product or your service? And so this is where like a business model would come in.
So are you getting into your cost structure? Like, how much are you spending on marketing? How much are you spending on staff? Are you spending the right amount? Are you spending too much? Are you spending too little? Is it all about numbers and finance?
So it's a lot about numbers, but it's also understanding, who your business partners are, who can you collaborate with on certain things, what is your pricing framework, and because you don't want to be a race to the bottom. This is something that you're bringing value. Yeah, we want to make sure that you're displaying your value. You want to make sure you're talking to your customer and your customer is receiving your message, and that you're aware of the feedback that you're getting from those things. And another component of that is being able to understand what your lifetime value of an acquired customer is. What does that cost you, and how long do you have them for? Right.
So you're saying run your business based on numbers. Like, for example, if the lifetime value of your customer is $3,000 and you know that, then of course it's okay to spend $300 acquiring that customer because it's worth it, because you make $3,000 off of $300. But you're saying if you don't know these numbers or even your cost structure, right? Like what percentage are you spending on staff? And if you're spending double what you should be spending, then that's coming off your profit. So you're saying really understand your numbers, really master your numbers, and run your business based on numbers.
Yeah. And if you either are not interested particularly in those things, please reach out to somebody or hire somebody that can do those things for you and can explain it to you on a level that you can understand and make actions based on those.
Can accountants do this, or they really don't, rise up?
Accountants can help you with that. Financial advisors, bookkeepers. I know a lot of smart bookkeepers that aren't accountants that can really help with this thing.
Got it. You're saying really get a handle of your numbers. Like,
absolutely.
It's like, you're spending money and it's like a recipe. You need to get the recipe right.
Yeah. If you're not looking at your numbers every day, it should be every week.
Got it. What are the numbers you would look at every week? I mean, if you were to just give me like 3 numbers you absolutely need to look at every week.
Yeah, I would look at my cost of, conducting my business. I would look at the revenue, and I would look at the profit margin.
Got it. And then you would look at what's going up, what's going down. Of course, you want revenues to go up. So if that's moving up, great. If not, what can you do to move it up? You want your expenses to either stay same or go down. So where can I save money, right?
Right, exactly.
And I assume you also will look at benchmarks, like what is the average, and so forth for other people like me.
Yep. Your, number of new clients, the number of conversions from your marketing, all of those things come into play there.
Got it. What's the fifth element of disciplined entrepreneurship?
So this is really how are you going to go about the design or structure or processes of your service or your product. And so you're identifying some key assumptions, you're testing your key assumptions there, and then that leads you to be able to define what your minimal viable business or product might be at that point.
So you're saying it's almost like working on the business, because the great business is one where you're not there, but it just keeps working. Mm-hmm. So like, how is the phone answered, right? So you're not answering the phone, but you've come up with processes around how to do it, and then your team does it perfectly.
Yes, successful delegation. Yep.
Right. So you're saying creating the systems and processes so your business can continue to thrive even when you're not the one doing all the work involved in all the parts of your business.
Exactly. Yeah.
And is this something the doctor owner can do, or should they get help? Like, what's your experience? You have successfully, worked as a veterinarian, run a veterinary practice. You've done a lot of stuff in veterinary medicine. What's your experience on this?
I'm going to tell you, I've done it both ways. The best successes, the fastest failures, all come from having other people involved. And so I would recommend, a team approach to things like this. And it's a matter of, finding those individuals that want to help you, mentors, people that you've worked with before, coaches, things like that can help you with some of these decisions if you're not actually partnered with anyone.
Got it. What's the last one? You mentioned the sixth part of disciplined entrepreneurship.
Yeah. It's how are you going to scale your business? What are things that you're going to do to move yourself towards the goal of addressing your total addressable market size? And how are you developing, your product plan or your service? And so, how do you make things efficient enough that you can start to scale and, you can start to decrease some of your expenses while you're increasing your revenue, and being able to, expand into other, regions and, other countries and things like that when you're starting to think of, scaling on a global level.
Got it. So you're saying, how do I, repeat what I have already done? So I'm successful here. Can I do it again?
Yes.
Or can I do it at twice the volume? So for example, you're doing $1 million. How do I get to $1.5 million, 2 million? Or it even could be like, okay, currently my team members are calling to confirm appointments. Can we use texting? So would that save time? Now, instead of it being $2,000 in my team members' time, it could be a $400 software product. So it's like finding creative ways to either increase profits or creative ways to grow revenues, right? Exactly. Mostly growing revenues. Is that?
Yep. Okay. That's correct. Yeah.
Right. So, but you can't do that till you have figured out that business that works, even at a small scale.
Yep. Correct. Yeah. You have to have everything. Yeah. Everything has to be in line on that small scale before you decide to, move from there.
Perfect. Let's say I enjoyed this podcast. I understood the 6 components of disciplined entrepreneurship, and I like some of the things you had to say. And I want to learn more. What books or resources or anything else you would recommend?
Yeah. So I would really, I think one of the staples is the book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And this is a book by the author. His name is Bill Aulet, Aulet. He is a professor out of MIT, and a lot of what I learned was from those processes. And so it's an excellent book, even for beginners. I really like and recommend The Innovator's Method, and that's a book by Nathan Furr and Jeff Dwyer. And then along the same lines, The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. And by the way, anything by Clayton Christensen is excellent. He's a really well-known he's not around anymore, but he was a really well-known Harvard business professor. He was well-versed in entrepreneurship and innovation. And then when it comes to leadership, which is another really important component of being an entrepreneur, knowing yourself and knowing others, and how do you gain power and influence? And so I recommend 2 books. And they're counter to each other. One is called The 7 Rules of Power by Jeffrey Pfeffer. He's a Stanford professor. And he explains how you actually move up an hierarchy level. And then counter to that is a book called The Power Paradox, and that's by Dr. Keltner. And so it's a book about how you gain power and influence. And it's actually about leading down rather than powering up. And so how do you gain power as a leader of others? And so the two books together work really well, to really kind of get a good definition of kind of where you lie and how you can influence others.
That's just wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself, your business. I know you help practices. How do you work with somebody? Like, do you do a needs assessment, or do you just jump into a problem they're facing and help solve it? Just kind of help understand you and what you do to help veterinary practice owners.
Yeah, I am more on I really love complicated problems and I love solving them. And so I really service the independent entrepreneur very well. They run into lots of different challenges in where they're at. And so I like to just kind of jump in and figure out where the pain points are within the business. And try my best to understand the strategy and the goals involved in a business and where they want to be eventually. And then just kind of help them, kind of organize and figure out, some of the strategies involved, some of the options they have in solving some of their problems. And so that's kind of the approach that I take, a more fractional approach. Sometimes I'll help the owner of a business or maybe the manager of a business, with some of the issues that they're having. And that can be related to marketing or operations, in the veterinary industry for the most part. And then, of course, leadership and establishing teams, building teams, those sorts of things. And so kind of a little bit of everything. So I can tend to a large range of problems and help figure out solutions to those.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today, Dr. Cornelius. Any final thoughts as we bring this to a close?
If you want to, you can get in touch with me if you want to. My email is vetsparkconsulting@gmail.com. I also host a VetSpark entrepreneur group for free-thinking veterinarians on Facebook. In addition, I am really active on LinkedIn. You can check out my different articles that I've written for kind of just a flavor of how I write and who I am. And that's it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here. Very nice to meet you. I'm a regular listener to the podcast, so I always appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. I learned a ton, and I hope our listeners did too. And I love this discipline entrepreneurship framework, the 6 components of it. I also want to take a minute to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like the podcast, definitely share it with colleagues, friends on social media, or, subscribe to our podcast. Until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and, of course, pet parents. Wishing all of you an amazing week ahead.